Hello, I'm Chris Wakling. I am the co-author of Cloudburst with Wilbur Smith, and it's great to be here today to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the book, to introduce it to you, and to answer some of your great questions about it and about the process of writing it.
From the master of adventure, Wilbur Smith, comes an epic new series. Join Jack and his friends as they race deep into the jungle and try to unravel the mysterious disappearance of his parents. Can they prove who is behind it and leave the jungle alive? Join the adventure. Out now.
Hi, I'm Anurag Dasila, and I'm from Year 6. Could you please tell me what are good ways to describe action, such as battles, in stories?
There are ways to control action, to keep it interesting. Varying the pace within a scene. You can slow action down and you can speed it up. In fiction, you can do that really seamlessly. It's a bit more obvious in film where you go into slow-mo, but you can do a similar effect with words. Other little things, avoid, if you can, the word suddenly. Suddenly this happened. Because generally that just makes it less sudden than if you write what happened. So being pretty careful with the timing of things, speeding the action up and then slowing it down, those are good ways of sustaining interest in an action scene. Maybe we can look at an example here. If you read and enjoyed the book. In this episode, Jack and his friends who were on safari come upon a troop of gorillas that they've been hoping to see, and they're amazed to begin with, and then the guide, Innocent, says something strange. So it begins, something strange. So Innocent, strange? They're magnificent, insisted Amelia. But Spencer's not here, said Patience. Patience is Innocent's daughter. She's also trekking with them. What? Who's Spencer? Innocent explained. The silverback. He's the head of the family, but I can't see him or Annabelle and her baby. Marcel, who had skirted the group, now came back with a worried look on his face and spoke hurriedly to Innocent in French. I caught one phrase I understood. Gravement malade. And though I didn't know who he was referring to, I got the gist. Somebody was badly sick. Agité, très agité, he went on. Xander was about to explain what that meant when the situation became obvious. A female gorilla moved in among the troop carrying an infant. It was obviously sick, limp across her forearm, its head canted back. I wondered if it was in fact dead, until I saw its lolling head roll to one side. One of the baby's arms flopped forward. It was missing a hand, the stump still raw. Seeing the wound, I winced. Can we help it? Asked Amelia. Innocent shook his head. Why not? Said Caleb. Caleb's the slightly annoying cousin. A crashing sound cut off his answer. The foliage behind the troop shook and exploded. A huge gorilla, almost twice the size of the next biggest, shot headlong into the clearing. His back was a slab of muscle dusted in silver fur, which shimmered as he jockeyed sideways with the momentum of a small car. He thumped the ground in front of him, then rocked back on his haunches and beat his chest, making an astonishing, percussive sound like two coconut halves being whacked together. So just to slow down for a second, you have a little bit of a build-up, and then this gorilla comes in, and we describe him in quite a bit of detail in that first moment, and we describe what he sounds like as well as what we can see. This was Spencer. I couldn't believe the size of him. The other gorillas had seemed so solid and powerful, but this silverback dwarfed them. Without realizing I'd done it, I'd copied Patience and shrunk low to the ground in the face of this display. Her head was bowed. I looked at my hands in my lap. They were quivering. So there's a little bit of suspense. We slow it down for a second. Yet Caleb, he's the annoying cousin, was still standing beside me, arms folded across his chest. It's just for show, he explained to Amelia, suddenly an expert, though his voice sounded a bit thin. Nothing to worry about. In a low murmur, Innocent said, he's upset. We must be respectful. Building a bit of threat here. Everybody knows they're nature's gentle giants, Caleb said. Even so, he's protective of little Redmond with his injury. The silverback, heavy on his knuckles, now crabbed sideways into a thicker patch of vegetation which partly obscured him for a moment. I lifted my camera to my eye. Beside me, Caleb took another step forward. "You've got to do something about the injured baby. You're right," he said to Amelia. No, insisted Innocent. "Stay still." The bushes into which the silverback had retreated rattled, and staccato guttural alarm calls came from within them. So, we're building the tension, and those noises, the rattling and the guttural calls, they're all there to make us worried. "It'll die if we don't intervene," Caleb went on. "Look at it, poor thing." The injured baby gorilla, still limp over its mother's arm, wasn't moving. Of course I felt sorry for it, and for its parents too, but if we could have helped, Innocent would have said so. He was saying the opposite. Squatting next to Patience, I saw the tendons in her father's neck were rigid with tension. If he'd had a leash on Caleb, he'd be drawing it in now, but there was no leash, and Caleb, shirt sleeves rolled and swinging that stupid machete of his. Caleb, who I sincerely doubted would lose a moment's sleep over the baby gorilla, however things turned out, was taking yet another step toward the troop. Okay, so Caleb's doing everything wrong, and we know that nothing good's going to come of this, hopefully, but there's suspense. We're not saying what's about to happen yet. "Really?" muttered Xander. "I mean, what's he trying to prove?" It wasn't just what he was trying to prove that struck me in that moment, but who he was trying to prove it to. Within the undergrowth concealing the silverback, the top of a large sapling bent sharply. A splitting, ripping sound accompanied the movement. The gorilla had torn down a tree 3 times its height. He rushed forwards again, dragging it, and flung it aside without apparent effort, scattering some of the troop, most of whom were now noisy, restless, and agitated. The silverback beat his chest again, veered off in a different direction, spun and faced us. Okay, so ripping down the tree is obviously just to show how fearsomely strong this creature is. I could feel my pulse in my throat, hear my heart despite the din. And so appealing to the different senses, what can the characters feel? Feel his heart, his own heartbeat. "Just showing off," said Caleb. "Perhaps we should give him some space," said Xander. "Oui, lentement," urged Marcel, smoothly stepping backwards. "What's wrong with you?" said Caleb. "The worst you can do in a situation like this is run away." Nobody was running. Quite the opposite. But having accused us of doing so, Caleb, looking straight at the silverback across the clearing, for some reason felt compelled to take 2 big strides towards him. He drew himself up tall, pointed his machete at the gorilla, and said, "See? Harmless." The silverback charged. Okay, so we get to the point where Caleb's saying it's harmless, and there's a bit of irony in that being the last word before the silverback charge. But note that we don't say suddenly, at incredible speed, out of nowhere, quite unexpectedly, the silverback charged. All of those words would just be unnecessary and would just get in the way. So just the silverback charged. And then a bit of sort of more slow-mo, I was talking about. 1 second, the whole scene was stock still. The next, everything seemed to be in motion. The gorillas, the bushes, the grass and leaves, us, the whole tableau was a frenzy, with Spencer, the prime mover, a whirlwind spinning forward. He came at us unstoppably fast. A vision overtook me in that moment. I saw light bouncing off car windscreens. This is a terrible memory that he's had from his past. And I've spliced this in to sort of slow the scene further. I saw light bouncing off car windscreens as the Mini swerved behind me in the street, heard the squeal of tires, felt the rush of something heavy moving wrongly through space. The crash was happening again, and this time I was in it, welded to the spot. As the gorilla closed in, Innocent jumped past me to pull Caleb clear, and Caleb swung both hands up to protect himself. And the gorilla, so the and is a way of keeping the action going. And the gorilla thumped straight past them and kept going, running over Xander and bouncing me into the bushes as he swept beyond us and veered away. The attack, if that's what you call it, was over in a flash. It's over in a flash, but I've taken a sizable paragraph there to describe it. I jumped back to my feet before I knew it, desperate to see where Spencer had gone and if he was readying to charge again. He wasn't. He'd immediately retreated into the middle of his troop and was studiously ignoring us. Having witnessed the energy unleashed in that one charge, heard the heaviness of his feet as he pounded towards us, felt the massive blur of him knocking us aside, I knew that he'd barely tried to hurt us at all. If he wanted to do that, he could have torn us limb from limb. I was still intact, and he'd not touched Amelia, Patience, or Marcel. Caleb was dusting himself down, apparently okay, if white in the face. But Xander was rolling from side to side, both hands gripping his left knee, clearly in pain. And Innocent was bent double, half groaning, half gasping, hugging himself hard. So in this moment, we want to know, the reader to be thinking, what's actually happened to these guys? I leaned down and put an arm around him, thinking he was probably winded, since that's the sort of noise I make if I hit the ground hard falling off my bike. And it was then that I noticed his fingers, pressed against his neck, were vivid with blood. And that's a place to stop the chapter. Vivid with blood, because we know, well, how bad is it? And we want to make the reader read on. But, you know, by looking at, and you don't obviously just have to look at that book, find any book that you have enjoyed that's got action in it and actually pull it apart. So this is a great scene. Why is this good? How quickly and slowly is the writer controlling the action? How much sensory detail are they giving? What questions are there unanswered within this action? Where is the suspense coming from? And you know, that is a very good exercise in itself. Just find something you love and see how they did it. You know, work it out, pull it apart, and then get a piece of paper and a pencil and have a go at writing your own version of it. You know, it doesn't matter if it's almost exactly the same. Make it your version of something that you've really enjoyed reading. You know, the first half is to read it carefully so that you understand it. You've worked out how it was achieved, how the effects were achieved, and then have a go yourself. It's just it's practice, and you'll get way better at it if you do that.
Hi, I'm Pavel from Bulgaria. My question is how to be an original author.
How to be original, how to be an original author. Now, the fact of the matter is, you know, I think what you may be getting at is how do I choose subjects other people haven't written about? How do I make sure what my stuff is new? And, you know, being inventive, really digging deep to find something new. We should all try and do that. But the true answer to this question, you know, how to be original, is that you won't be able to help being original because only you are you. And only you have had your experiences. And we may have had similar experiences, but nobody's had them quite like you. So when you sit down to write, it will be unique. And you need to trust yourself in that. Trust yourself with it. And don't ever be the sort of writer who, I can't write about that because it's already been done. You know, Shakespeare took stories that were already famous and rewrote them to make the best versions of those stories. And that's fine. Here's an idea. If you want to reassure yourself of your own originality, get hold of somebody from your family or a friend. You only need one other person to do this, but you could have 2 or 3. Go and sit somewhere. It could be anywhere. It could be your kitchen, it could be your bedroom, or it could be a shop or anywhere. And say, right, we're going to write for 5 minutes. It only needs to be 5 minutes. If you're feeling really keen, make it 10. I'll write for 5 minutes just describing that space. And then when you've done that, swap the pieces of paper over and read and note the differences in what you noticed. And that will reassure you that you have your own take on everything. Just one other little tip while we're talking about originality. A good writers notice stuff. So if you want to strengthen your originality, just do as much noticing as you can. You know, when you're looking at things, try and just take notes. In fact, take notes. Have a notebook and jot down things that you find interesting. Now, I've got lots of these notebooks, and they're all full of ideas for stories, and I'm not making it up. I've got them all over the place, and just carry one around with you the whole time and jot stuff down, notice stuff, and you will strengthen your original noticing muscles.
How long did it take on your first book from an idea in your head to the book hitting the shelves, and what were the main hurdles in the process?
Charlotte, hi. Thank you very much for sending in a question for me to answer, and a very good question it is too. How long does it all take, this process? It does take longer than you might think. So to answer your question specifically, how long did it take on my first book? Well, I had the idea, and I was working away on other things at the time, so the idea was sort of knocking around. I might have made a few notes, jotted it down in my notebook. What about writing a big story, a novel about this? And I would have added to those notes over a period of months before I made a start on the story. But I started thinking about the book. We call that month 0. Month 3 or 4, I started writing the book. Month 10 or so, I finished writing it, and then it would have been a full year after that had been through the editing process and then got into the shop. So a good 2 years from the first thought to actually walking into a bookshop and seeing it there and waving it about. So what are the main hurdles in the process of writing a story and getting it published? Well, there's lots of people who are keen to get their stories published. So the main hurdles in the first place are getting good at it by, as I've said, practicing and enjoying practicing and writing stuff that you don't mind not being published. If you think about an artist will have a sketchbook, and they'll do lots of sketches before they necessarily start a great big painting or collection of paintings. So, lots and lots of practice, that's the first hurdle. Then having faith in an idea, that's the second hurdle, and pursuing it right the way through to the end. And then you have to pat yourself on the back when you finished it, because it is now a finished story. And no matter how much it can be improved, it's finished. And do the editing, that's the next hurdle, editing it. And then you've got to hand it over to professionals and hope that they want to buy it and part with money for it. That's a big hurdle. And you have not disappointed, to keep yourself going and write another thing if that one doesn't happen to land on the right desk. And then once somebody has made that marvelous phone call and said, yeah, we want to publish this, the next hurdle is making sure that they are absolutely happy with it by doing the edits that they suggest. And then you have an edited book. And the final hurdle before it's out of your hands is you need to proofread it. So it's slightly different. Editing is improving the story and improving the brilliant description. And then proofreading is making sure it's correct and there's not mistakes in it. Because if I was talking to you now, but I had spinach in my teeth, you would be looking at the spinach in my teeth and not listening to what I was saying, and you'd be like, Chris, sort yourself out, and then I'll listen to you. And if there are mistakes in your work, it's like spinach through the work. So you have to clear your story of spinach. That is your final hurdle. And then you hand it over to a team of publishers, and they do clever things and hopefully get it into lots of bookshops and into the hands of readers. And that's their hurdle. And you can help with that. They'll ask you to help. But ultimately, you're not the professional there, they're the professional. Your bit you control is writing the story in the first place, and only you can do that.
Hi Chris, my name is Avon and I'm 11 years old. Me and my sister Kirsten have just had our debut novels published and we are currently writing some short stories. My question is, how many books a year would you advise a writer to write/publish?
Hi there, Avon. How many books should you write a year? Well, I think you find your natural pace, write as often as possible. If you can write a bit each day, then that's marvelous, and see how much it amounts to. I wouldn't put yourself under pressure at your age, or indeed at my age, to write a certain number of books. It really depends. You say you're writing short stories. Well, you're going to write more of them in a year than you'll write novels. You don't want to rush the writing of anything. You want it to be as good as possible. You just want to keep at it, little and often. And of course, it will be different for every writer. Some writers write much more quickly, others write more slowly. I have written books. I've written the first draft of a book. I think the fastest I did that was in about 5 months. For a full adult novel, the first draft of it in about 5 months. But then I had to spend a fair bit of time editing it and improving it, obviously. I've also written books more slowly. I wrote a historical novel. It took me a couple of years because there was an awful lot of research involved in that. But there was less editing to do at the end of it, possibly because I'd gone a little bit more carefully along the way. You'll find your own natural rhythm. The important thing is just not to lose that rhythm by pausing and forgetting about it and then trying to pick it back up again. If you can keep the momentum going, you will, you get to the end of things and they will soon start to stack up. The paragraphs turn into pages, turn into chapters, turn into stories.
Hi Chris, hope you're doing okay. I'm Kirsten, I'm 12 years old. Me and my sister Raven have been writing for a long while now, but our parents think we could really benefit from a creative writing course. Could you recommend any for us?
That's great to hear that you've been writing so seriously for a long time already, and that really bodes well, because the biggest single factor, I think, in learning how to write is practicing. Practicing alongside reading. Read and practice and you will not go far wrong. Read in a particular way where you're trying to work out what a writer has done on the page, why they've chosen to write the paragraphs and sentences that they've chosen and words that they've chosen. That's a very good way to progress yourself. And then simply practicing, writing a little and often. Writing a little and often, you will strengthen your voice and you'll strengthen your imagination by practicing. Now, if you want to go on a particular course, I hope that you're getting some help at school. I hope that your school teachers will be able to give you some encouragement and some specific exercises, because that's what they're there for. There are places, there's an organisation that I've worked for called the Avon Foundation, and they run courses for young people. Often they take schools groups, so you could get onto your school and ask them to take a group to one of the Avon Foundation houses. And they do have grants that can help make these things more affordable. And if you went along, you'd get some great tips and you'd have fun and you'd spend a week practicing. But there is no substitute for practicing yourself. Ultimately, it's between you and the page and the pages of other books. So by all means, take a course. But the biggest thing that you can do, particularly at your stage, is just keep writing, keep practicing, keep reading. So thank you very much for all your questions. I have to say they're brilliant questions. They really got me thinking, and I hope that my answers are helpful to you. If you're writing now, thinking about it in the way that you are, sure, you're going to make brilliant writers as you grow up and get better and better and better at it. And I'd just like to encourage you to keep practicing, have a bit of faith in yourselves, and write good stuff.